be joining us in just a couple minutes. We have a few intros to do. So we live, Maddie? All right, GM Farcaster. Woo! It's so weird. Can you guys like always be around clapping for us? Because that's pretty cool. Yeah. Like we're just going to take you everywhere now for every episode. This is episode 100 of GM Farcaster, which we do talking about all the things in the Farcaster ecosystem. Right now, we've been doing it 3 days a week since September, and we're going to be moving to 5 days a week in a couple weeks because we are going all in on GM Farcaster.
We're creating big bets on Farcaster.
Big bets on Farcaster. GM Farcaster Network coming very soon. So GM Farcaster, it is Friday, May 3rd, and you are here with Nana Schroff, and for episode 100 of GM Farcaster. So before we bring up our special guests, I have a few things I have to get there, so I wrote them down, which I'm really bad when I have to script things, like it's awful, so we're going to do the best we can. So we got to give some shout outs to some of our amazing partners. Pinata, I don't know if Justin's here, but thank you, Pinata. They've been amazing to work with. We have some cool things coming with them soon. We want to thank also Bull-Eyed. Is Oxford here? Oxana, where are you? Oh, she probably slept in. She was out late.
She's here.
If you're here somewhere, Oxford, we love you. And also Matcha. And Matcha is over there in the corner. They have something for you to sign. We're going to turn that into an NFT. It's going to be airdropped to all our hypersub. So make sure you go over there and do that. We're going to make something cool out of that. So thankful for all of them. And then especially big thanks to our WowWow and Mole subscribers. Yes, we did weird things with our subscriber names. Yes, we did. We love you so much, though. Thank you all for your support. It means the world. You have no idea. So we also dropped something special today. If you haven't checked your wallets, you got a special piece. This is our Here for the Art number 3. We're doing one a month with a Farcaster artist. And this one's from Chris Co-Created, that was co-created by you all, and you didn't even know it. So if you've ever minted an episode of GM Farcaster, your ENS is in the background. And if you are a Mole, WowWow, or a CLP, or a special guest who's been on our show, your PFP is featured. So you're all in there. So check your wallets. And if it's hidden, go check OpenSea and unhide that thing. It's really cute. And it's also, we posted it today. So go take a look at that. It's really cool. Thank you, Chris Co-Created, for making that happen. And thank you, Zora, for actually working today so I could drop it. Man, that would have been bad. Thank you, Zora. I love you. Love you, Jacob. No shame. So wanted to mention, we're going to be moving to GM. We are officially GM Farcaster Network LLC. Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah. And on our partnership agreement, we had to put an address, and we said, "Where's this business reside?" And we're like, "Farcaster? Like, is that a thing? Can we say that?" And they're like, "Oh, you need a mailing address." Okay. Florida, but you know. But really, we know it's network state. So we have a couple like new shows we're going to be putting out. We're going to be also creating a network for creators who are already creating on Farcaster, who are already doing shows. They're doing their own podcasts, they're doing their own newsletters, and we'll be amplifying those creators. So that's going to be very soon, and some of the people you already know and love are going to be a part of that. And we're also going to be creating some new shows, including, I have a name for this now. Thank you, Brennan. So we're going to be creating Cast Out, which is a Farcaster survivor game. Yes, this is really happening. Not like Crypto the Game, love Crypto the Game, great, but it's going to be like 16 to 18 people, that crazy, and it will only take you 10 minutes a day, not 10 hours. But it'll all be Farcaster challenges, and then also Don't Cook Again. So if you're a cook, if you're a chef, and you want to play Don't Cook Again, little cooking competition show where the last thing you'll have to make, of course, will be Mole. Come on, people. I thought you'd be able to answer that question. Maybe we'll talk Dan into being like the final judge or something. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. So a couple other shout outs to Purple. They were the first ones to give us some financial support. So thank you, Purple. Amazing DAO for Builder DAO. And also Base, who just, does that thing where they're like, hey, we want to give you money out of the blue because you create everything on Base. And we're like, hey, thanks. That's amazing.
Okay, I have a serious question.
Yeah.
Does base do anything besides give away money?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure. Like,
Just grants
They're
every
just like,
day.
it's just like every once in a while, you're just like, they're just like, hey, we just, hey, today we gave all these people money and they had no idea it was coming. It's like amazing. So just, create cool stuff. And sometimes people are like, hey, we like that. Here's some money. And lastly, who paid for the food today? Well, that was BuilderDAO. So thank you, BuilderDAO, Announce Builder. And also the purple noggles that you see everywhere. Those are also from BuilderDAO, and please wear them. Post a pic in the /Builder channel, and you might win some E, like for real. There's a round going on right now, so post a pic, and whoever wore it best, if you are a BuilderDAO holder, and I know there's a few of you in here, your likes are what's going to choose the winners. So I know Lynx is, Yes to Crypto is, a few other people. If you held a BuilderDAO token, you got some votes in this one, so go do that. And then I have to give a huge shout out. There are some people who show up to our chat all the time and make our live streams so much fun. So Lynx, like amazing. DeWoofy, I don't think he's here, but he's always in there too. Yes to Crypto, where the heck are you? I can't find you now. But amazing. Yes to Crypto also signed up for 2 years on our Wow Hyper Sub. Like that was like almost a little stressful, frankly. I felt it was like a little much. I was like, that's a lot of confidence. So thanks for that. And I think, KBC somewhere, Katarina's here, Oxford. I'm going to shout out Naomi, she's not here, but who else is really in the chat? And all of you who show up all the time, we love you. Thank you so much for being there and making it so much fun while we're live streaming. And last but not least, thank you to Ted McBain, Heavyweight, Matthew, everyone who has helped put this event on, all of FarCon, amazing. And also, big special thanks, and I'm so glad you're sitting in the front row, Cameron and Grin. If they hadn't done FarCon #1, the beta, or FarCon 0, the beta, Adrian and I wouldn't have met, this wouldn't be happening, we wouldn't have been leaving our jobs and starting a media network, and yes, that all sounds crazy, and it is. So thank you to them, or we blame you later, one or the other. I'm not quite sure which. So my mom might have questions for you, but all good. And then right after this episode concludes about 10:15, because they're going to need to get to FarHack, we're going to keep rolling, and we're going to talk about on-chain media. And we have Nonlinear coming up. We have Nick Collins from UFO. We have Lucas from Pods.media. We have Tony Hawk. We have Kristen. And we have Art Lou as I can't even explain this one. Just Alina Ferry, and I'm missing one, and I'm sorry, but it's not coming to my head at the moment. But we'll have all of them coming up afterwards to talk about Humpty, to talk all about on-chain media and building your podcast on-chain and all that. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. And then following that, we'll have an on-chain media meetup with everybody who wants to stick around and just chat. So with that, I think we should bring up our guests. So we have very special guests. You might know them. It's Dan Bruin, and we just confirmed that we believe, unless Bruin's wrong, this is the first podcast you've done together? All right, come on out. DWRNB, here they are. We needed music. We really needed music on that. We blew that. Derek, we blew it. We should have had music. We should have intro music. I know, that was bad. That was really bad. We should have done intro music. But thank you all for coming. And I really wish I had done a Polymarket on what our first question would be, because I guarantee you're not going to guess it. But it's something I've been thinking about for a very long time.
I'm excited.
Varun,
I'm a little scared.
what is a techno watermelon?
Oh. So the backstory, do you know Nassim Nicholas Taleb?
No.
Okay,
This is
well,
going to be a
probably
deep
good
dive.
that you
Need
know.
a backstory, the backstory.
Yeah, there's a backstory to the backstory. But he called somebody a techno watermelon on the internet as an insult, and I just thought it was really funny, and I adopted it as my name.
David Sachs.
Oh, fantastic.
And then our next question is for Dan. Why the arch and why purple? Like, why did you make those choices on the branding? And we're just very curious about that.
This is a longer story, but we have some logos that we never show ever.
I remember Cast with some of those.
Yeah,
Remember
those are even
Those
some
are
of
the
the
ones-
better,
the
better
worse
logos.
ones? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
never
They're
shown.
even worse
So
versions.
some of the original logos totally memory hold. But yeah, so I think I'm not a designer, but I play one on TV, and so I was messing around in Figma, and Varun was not happy with the logo, and I don't know. I ended up. So Farcaster obviously comes from the Hyperion Cantos, the books, and it's an arch. So we were trying to kind of come up with a logo that would kind of symbolize that, and I thought doing something too sci-fi is going to have too much detail, and so it's something that looked a little bit more like the Arc Patreon. Seemed simple. I think I found some CCC0, SVG, and then I removed a bunch of the detail. So that's about it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. We've been wondering these questions, and now we have better questions. But those are ones I had to start with. I'm
Can
like,
I just put, I know your question.
yeah, you got questions.
Hyperion, you guys have both read?
Yep.
Varun remembers it. I don't remember it. I
Okay.
did it in high school. So
How important do you think it is for anyone? How connected to Farcaster?
Are you
Hyperion
giving a
beyond
book
the arch?
recommendation? Are you signing homework right now?
No, I'm just curious. I downloaded it. I read the first paragraph and I was like, nah. But I'm making a big bet on Farcaster, so do I have to go pick it up, or does it not matter?
No, the name's pretty much the only thing we borrowed.
Uh,
You'll do this.
So I haven't read it since we started working on it, so I should reread it. But one thing I've been told is that there's an evil corporation that is involved with the Farcaster stuff.
Yeah, so turns out, spoiler alert, that the podcasters are really, really bad, and bad things happen. But it was a cool name, so we kept it.
Full name, don't read the book.
Okay, we
Okay, we never don't read the book. You want to take the next question? This is all you.
Yeah.
This is your idea.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I remember a Balaji tweet one time where,
Are you referring to that Balaji tweet?
No,
No,
never.
no.
A different Balaji tweet.
it's in the, no, he talked about how each social network becomes ultimately founder moderated. Kind of how Twitter under Jack is going to be different than Twitter under Elon. Do you have thoughts on what's Farcaster under Dan mean?
Well, I think all of us, and I think what I would say is it's probably in reverse. So we had a lot more influence in the early days in terms of it was literally gated by our taste. But I think in a world where it is actually permissionless and you don't have to have any relationship with Forecast or the core team to participate on the protocol and or build your own client and community, I actually think you're going to have many different people's taste. And so I think the initial group of people who have influence on the protocol and kind of the shape of the protocol, that will last for a long time. In the same way that when you start a city where the initial street is, that's kind of the core. But over time, look in New York City, there are new neighborhoods or neighborhoods that kind of rise up because now this area was cheap because it wasn't in the original core. So I think it's going to be a little bit more dynamic. And in a world where there is no centralized algorithm or moderation, then the taste is going to get much more diffuse over time.
All right. Next one. That's you too. You think we do this every day?
Can I talk more about the founder moderated stuff? No, can I just this is a good
Sure.
conversation.
Okay.
I know I
All
have
right,
my
we got
50
time.
questions.
All right, I'm going to be
We
the
got
one who
15
takes that
minutes.
time.
Early on, I think early on when I came in, I think you're thinking future, and it doesn't matter, and I love that. That's kind of one of the reasons I came was because I really liked there's not one person in charge. And I love, you were so visionary, so you were always like, it doesn't matter what I think, it doesn't matter what I think. I don't know if you remember that, or if you had that vibe or something, but I think it was really important to me, and I'm excited to get to the point where it doesn't. But I early on, I remember just vibes-wise feeling like people were really looking at you for guidance, and I don't know if you have tremendous kind of power over just influence, not just on the algorithm, but kind of the vibes, and I don't know,
I think that's a good thing, but also I'd say one other thing to that. I think your sense of humor helped shape a culture And I think that's important too.
That's scary because I have
Yeah.
3 younger brothers and they all think I'm not funny.
Yeah,
so.
you are. And Rune is too.
I don't know
Rune's a secret
if
funny
those-
person.
I don't
Like,
know.
you really are. Some of your casts are hilarious. Like there's little subcasts.
Some of your
hilarious.
cats.
I said some. I said some, not all. Some I can't even understand. I mean, like, I have to ask her. I'm like, I don't know what he just said. Can you explain? But I think I think what you're trying to get to is like, the founders are shaping the culture.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be a hard, like,
And,
Yeah,
we're
no,
here,
not
like,
about
you-
it.
I think you emphasize builder, creator, I mean, you amplified a lot, but,
So have you ever built like a campfire?
Yeah.
In like a windy environment?
no.
Because if you do it in a windy environment, if you've ever done that, basically the campfire goes out.
Yeah.
So if you're not there constantly feeding it fuel and oxygen, it will die. And I think a lot of early Farcaster, I mean, literally it's like me posting on the timeline because Bruno's actually working, but I'm the one like kind of nudging. It's like anyone responding, anyone posting anything on Farcaster, I tried to give a reply to.
Yeah.
Anytime I said something remotely funny in the office, Dan would say, "Can you please cast that right now?"
I remember like literally, it's like, could we get to 100 casts a day at the top level? And so I think that is how the first couple of years very much felt. And you get to finally a point when you're building a fire that it becomes a bit more self-sustaining. Obviously, you still need to continue to fuel it. And then in a situation where you have a wildfire, it can just kind of spread on its own. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think that there's a version of the world where it was like any given weekend that I didn't actually use Farcaster, there were going to be no posts. So I think we're beyond that point now, which is a good thing. But I think
We're well beyond.
right,
Take a weekend off then.
but I think that there's a version of the world where you kind of have to will the thing into existence
Yeah.
until it actually takes on a shape of its own. And so by virtue of you doing that, you're going to have a huge imprint on just culture and who's active. So for better or for worse, that is the seed of the community. And then I think what I hope is that you're going to actually start to have it be multipolar, right? Like I actually just don't want it to be the group of OGs that have, I think, a lot of influence in their work. Obviously, I'm extremely grateful for everyone who's participated. And I personally think that group is actually a good group to like build a social network around. But I think Farcaster is only successful if you get to a world where I can come into Farcaster and not even care about the lore and the history of the network, but use it actually as a protocol because of all the other functionality that it has.
Yeah.
And that creates, I think, a much more robust ecosystem and one that is going to be potentially self-sustaining beyond whatever work we're doing.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for going down that with me. It's kind of what interested me.
Even if it's interest, I mean,
I know. I'm sorry. Thank you all.
The other thing just to remember is like basically most people on the network who have a kind of big audience or kind of like, again, this idea of OGs, I didn't know who they were before. They're just like internet strangers.
Yeah.
And now they're internet friends, but like, and then now in person. But I think, the people I onboarded from my network all were like, cool, you're working on a decentralized social, and they just never came back. Right now they come back and they're like, look at my low FID. And it's like, okay. But like,
how can you spot a friend of Dan? They have a really low FID and they haven't casted since 2022.
Right, and I mean, like, look, there are people like Jacob and Jesse who were early and then stuck around.
And we
but
thank them for that.
But I think that there's also I actually said this yesterday or 2 days ago. Someone, and I try not to blow people up, but sometimes the reply kind of annoys me, so I do the quote cast thing. And maybe I shouldn't, but someone was like, "Oh, everyone below 10,000 FID should get a special badge." I'm like, no, like, what have you done for Farcaster lately is proof of work, right? Like that ultimately is what's valuable. And I think Cameron made a point the other day, and I kind of played off of it, but like, I think people should way less index on followers and more on just like who's responding to your casts, like engaging with you and having conversations.
Yeah.
And we can probably do a little bit more work there. I mean, followers is such an ingrained social media like baseline metric, but the reality is like who's engaging with your cast is far more interesting to me than like total aggregate number of followers.
I also think one of my favorite casts from you is Farcaster requires proof of work, and I have that saved. Eventually I'll make a shirt with it, but I haven't done it yet.
My advice.
It reminded me that because the OG went to 938 people who were active, not 938 people with the lowest FIDs.
I think I got like 200 or 300 different DMs over the last like year, being like, oh, I was an OG, I need the OG NFT. And I said the criteria was you were active, and they were like, well, I was active before, and I was like, you had to be active literally the 2 weeks before. Like that's actually what matters. The social network is a living thing, right? You don't get credit for like having participated in history. Like it's like now. Like what are you doing for Farcaster now is actually how people should be thinking about it.
And I do think that NFT will have more value for those who didn't sell it, who held it somewhere down the road. And I know those people. I know a couple of those. I think they're sitting right here. There's a couple over there. I know that. But I think that's important. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just on the followers, and really just my experience and my advice to people is really don't focus on followers. Focus on, and this is like my personal, it's just how do you feel when you use Farcaster? And that's kind of all that matters. Like, what's your experience? And I had very small number of followers, and I would talk to a very small number of people, and I felt really good. Like, it was energizing.
Yeah.
And
very much
so kind of focus less on the externalities and more.
It's not your work.
Right.
Every time something happens, it's like someone gets a badge and she's like,
there's
there's a new power badge, but that's not your worth.
All right, we're in. You put out a great blog this week.
I still don't understand
Who
it.
read it?
Who read it?
Like,
how many of you
read
understood it? It was like 2.
It was.
I'm kidding. It was. She did.
Yeah,
she got
I read it on the plane. Loved it.
Can I quiz you on it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please do. That would be amazing. I would love that.
So not a dev. Used to be. It's been a long time. I'm finding the Farcaster like endlessly fascinating. And so this is kind of you talked about your delta graph.
Yep, that's right.
And I just feel like you're solving a very interesting computer science problem. I just want to bring it up because I want to plug it, because I think people should read it, but is there any kind of highlights from the blog you want to?
I'm the professor. She's giving homework. She keeps giving homework. She wants you to read books. And
Hyperion and these blogs.
There you go.
Let's see. What's a good takeaway? I think the most interesting thing is maybe in the conclusion of the blog post so the quick summary of it is, to build Farcaster, we ended up coming up with a new kind of consensus model, which is slightly different from how blockchains work and slightly different from how the traditional decentralized networks like the internet and email work. And this was like the right balance that helped us scale a social network. You don't run into all the friction of I have to pay for every post that I make and all of the stuff that you do with blockchains. And at the same time, you don't run into all of the challenges that you do with email and with where things are fragmented, and it's very difficult to start an email server today because everyone has their own setup and it's different. And I think the cool thing that it will do for Farcaster, like this model, is it will make it very easy for developers to get started and build new things, and for companies like Naynar to actually get access to data and make it available to others. But I think the really interesting takeaway for folks here is, what else could you take this model and apply to? Like, what other kind of consumer app that was previously hard, expensive, or difficult to decentralize on a blockchain can you now do if you copy the model that we've taken and taken it to your application?
And maybe to add, so Kiwi News, obviously Tim and Mac, that is actually a kind of loosely similar to how Farcaster works in terms of the off-chain component. And I actually just learned last night that Zora actually has an off-chain pool of pre-mints now that is similar, using a similar kind of architecture, which I kind of like, because Jacob was the on-chain maxi who told me originally that like we should be doing the social network on-chain. And so now even to see Zora doing some of this stuff, I think to Varun's point, it's very much a new tool in the toolkit, because I think prior it was either you're on-chain or you're federated, and it's actually something that's new in the middle.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
That helped me understand it a little better too. So thank you. Can I ask my Ben Roy question? All right. So Ben Roy had casted recently, from CIPA, about that you should hire a CMO and an ecosystem person, which I don't even know what that would mean. But so you had some good comments back and forth. I think you actually convinced him a little bit there. And I totally disagree. Obviously, I might have some bias on this. But what do you think in terms of what you see that's already been being done by others in a decentralized, permissionless way that's working, and where do you see the holes, would be my first question. And at what point would you think, yes, this is the time when we do need a CMO or somebody to really take the lead on marketing? Like, is there a certain DAO number, for example?
Yeah, so, I mean, sometimes I respond to things to be a little bit more provocative just from a,
Just for fun?
yeah, just make it a little bit more interesting, but.
We only do that on Twitter. We don't do that
Okay,
on
so let's just go through a couple of questions. Who's the CMO of Ethereum?
Yeah, I know, exactly.
I would argue that it's been pretty successful, right? Like, you didn't need a CMO. There was never a distinct, like, okay, like we hired this like person that came in from Pepsi and they're doing these ads and all of that, right? So why does Ethereum work? Is like fundamentally it's decentralized, it's bottoms up, right? In a world where we have a CMO and that's their just mandate to do all this stuff, do Cameron and Grin feel the agency to go create FarCon? Right, and then Ted take it on the next year, and
Yeah.
we have a weekly podcast. GM Farcaster doesn't exist, and so I actually think if you really believe in a kind of incredibly neutral, decentralized protocol, you actually need that to be a bottoms up. And frankly, the founders are that's our job in terms of like if you want the narrative and the kind of core things that the CMO is supposed to do. And one of my questions was, what are we not doing today that you think a CMO is going to do? Because if we really actually think that's important, we should be doing that, right? Like it's not something to delegate. It's the same thing when people were like, you should hire a community person. Like that, no, that's my job, right? Like it's so. I think when we get to a point where we have a very clear model for put amount of resources in over here or money, and then out the other side you get more users or kind of, then I actually think you can start to like build a machine around doing that. But I still think we're very much in discovery mode. So any version of us trying to outsource that to another person and not having like a true sense of like what's happening on the ground and what are the gaps, like ultimately, I don't actually think the CMO solves that. What I would say is it should just be a critique of what we're doing. And it's like, what should we be doing differently? And then we should decide whether that should be a priority or not, and then just go do it.
And the other thing I was thinking about is you saw what happened, like Frames Friday hits and everything goes crazy. DGen, everything goes, you have all these new users, and if you're not ready because they were also there was a point about you're hiring too many developers or you're focusing too much on that, and it's like, well, that's not ready, and that foundation isn't ready for 1 million people. If you all of a sudden have 1 million out of nowhere, and also all the other pieces that go with that, like Maynard and all these other people aren't ready for that. It's not going to matter that they're there because they're going to leave immediately if things aren't ready for them because they're going to get frustrated when things are down and all that. So
I think it's also like one of the anti-patterns you sort of see is like people trying to large startup but don't really understand what it's like, or large starting a community or a movement. It's the pattern often is what works at a big company. Oh, you have a C level title that has this. Let's try to bring them on board here and make this work. And that never really pans out. I think like the way Dan and I have approached this is, what's the actual problem that needs solving? Who do we need to get on the team to solve that? And then keep grinding through that one step at a time until we get to the right place. And not starting with, what does the org structure for a big company look like, and how do we hire those people now?
Two other things. So one, what is the value from a marketing standpoint of my Moline post?
right, yeah,
Like it's mimetic, it creates culture. Like obviously everyone's roasting me, that's completely fine. And so I think like you can't fake that, right? And no one is going to be able to come up with that. Like ultimately, it's actually participating in the culture is some of the best marketing. And then the second thing I would say is like I still believe that the single best marketing thing that we have is when you open up Webcast and you say new version available, restart. Like that itself is like the culture that we're building. Is like we are making progress all of the time. And when we get to some level of maturity where that's not happening as much, I hope that's a while. But at the same time, like then you have to start thinking about, okay, how do you broaden this? But right now, I actually think it's like every time we make progress and release something that's interesting, whether that's within Workcast or at the protocol, that's actually the best marketing we can do because it creates passionate fans, creates interest from developers, and that I actually think is the best possible marketing.
totally great. We actually had that restart thing on one of our episode cover art because it was right around Friends Friday. It was like every time you logged in, it was like restart, and I was happy about it. It's not. I think that's if you're here, you're a lot more tolerant, especially early on, and you understand startups. You're very tolerant and tolerant of anybody who's doing anything in startups and trying data things and all that. because it's fun and you understand that this is going to happen and this is part of the deal. This is how you grow.
We just talked about, we didn't know what test flight was.
I had no idea what test flight was until
We had Workcast
I
on
jumped
test
on
flight.
Farcaster.
And I was like, and now it's not just Workcast, but how many
All the
dozens
things.
of other apps that we're trying from people, and test flight just becomes something that you use.
Yeah, and I think that one other thing we have is, so our app is in React Native, so we have this thing called OTAs, and one of the, people critique using React Native because it's not as performant sometimes, but the one thing you can do with React Native that you can't do with a native build is like you can ship multiple times per day without having the App Store have to do the review.
Right.
There's a little bit of a gray area, but it's nice because it allows us to move a lot faster.
Oh, so that's the trade-off. So if we complain about performance,
I mean, you
it
can
means
ask Varun on this.
Varun,
I
is
think
the
like
trade-off a
we
little
should
bit?
be
Like,
close to performance of native, but
No, I think we can get to pretty good performance with this too, at least for what we're doing and the scale that we're at.
mobile's amazing. By the way, I'm like after you on desktop. It's just me. It's just me. You're sitting next to me now.
Does anyone want desktop improvements? Okay, there's a couple.
So-
There's
so
one
the
more.
desktop app.
So
No,
no,
not
the
the desktop app.
backstory for this is.
It's just the browser version, and it's literally. I know I'm one of the few people, but I'm sitting next to you, so now I just feel like I'm going to say that. And I didn't
She's
mean
having
to
an
do that.
actual
Sorry.
customer service
So
conversation.
the backstory behind this is Adrian comes to our office and she says, I have this issue, but I'm going to be there in person and you can fix it for me. And as soon as she comes in, it stops happening. And she's never seen it happen again. Until you left.
Exactly.
You just
Okay.
needed to connect to their network.
Yeah, and that was
It was
just
fine.
it was fine.
I would go to.
Okay. Okay, so Chris Dixon talks about outside in versus inside out versus outside in technology. So inside out are the technologies that have to kind of come from the big companies. So AI requires tons of funding. Outside in, more happening on the fringes. Blockchain notoriously an outside in technology. The outside in tends to attract. I can't remember how eloquently he said it. I call it kind of the weirdos and the rebels. So, what are your childhoods? What happened that attracted you? And like, obviously, we're all
By the way,
here, so like, safe space
Easier people.
for the wackos. But
Like, does
Do you
that
identify
Yeah, do you
as-
think that you've always been a bit of a rebel and a like kind of an early adopter and for both? That's a question for both of you, or is this more like in a different way?
Definitely a bit of a weirdo. I think Dan and I both spent a lot of time in weird online communities in very different ways. Whether it was World of Warcraft for me, or I don't know what the equivalent is for you, Dan.
Eve Online.
Eve Online. But I think we spent a bunch of time doing things that were weird and interesting and nerdy just because it was really, really fun and tinkering around with kind of what was on the frontier. And I think that's why we liked playing around. Like both of us actually, when we were in college in different ways, ended up building apps on different social networks. Dan built something on Twitter, I built something on Facebook at the time. And so it was a very natural fit many years later that when we got together and started talking about what to build, that tinkering around in the frontier of social was something that we got very excited about.
It just reminded me of Cassie did an amazing talk yesterday and was kind of went through like the history of computers and like talking about the homebrew and way them actually going through and building these very janky things but that's how you get there. So I thought that was really interesting and I could see those connections and it kind of relates to that outside in. Anything? And were your parents both here tonight?
Yeah, my parents were here.
Is your brother here? Is Goose here?
Goose is not here.
How dare he not show up? That's ridiculous.
They're expecting a baby, so.
Okay, that's fine then. Fine, all right, fine, Goose.
Yeah, but my parents were here because they were helping with the kids this week.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, my parents are not actually very technical, so it's kind of maybe a response of just doing something different. And I actually went into college. I was going to major in computer science, and they convinced me that all the IT jobs were going overseas, and so that's what they literally said. And so I ended up majoring in English, which not the best use of my time. But I generally, similar to Vernon, I think I spent a lot of time on the internet. And the coolest thing my parents ever let me do was I got to use an old computer that I fixed up in my room and just having access to the internet. And so I spent a lot of time on Wikipedia, forums, things like that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I I think the big thing for me, and having been in Silicon Valley for 10 years before moving down here, is I always gravitate towards the things where we're like, to use Chris's thing, like what people do on the weekends.
Yeah.
It's like basically if there's a show, HN and Hacker News has since I think gotten like worse, and it's like very anti-crypto. But that ethos of like call it around 2010 or 2012, where it's just like people showing weird things that they're building. Like here's a link to a repo. That's still like the highest form of like something that I can click on in the morning, because I'm just like, someone built something, they put it out on the internet, and maybe other people get interested.
I feel like that's Warpcast all the time too.
Right, so-
like here's something cool I just built over the weekend. Isn't that neat? Like that's really fun.
I always say this to people, but it's like if you've built something on Farcaster, and it frankly doesn't even have to be on Farcaster, but you want to share it with people on Farcaster, if you send it to me as a VC and I click through and see someone interesting, I'm gonna recast it, because I just think it's like that's such an amazing expression of it takes courage. Like I worked on this thing and I want to share it with the world, and people can be pretty brutal, and I think on Farcaster it's actually quite nice. It's the anti-Hacker News of like a lot less cynicism. Optimism is, like default. So I think that's good. Maybe it won't be always like that, but right now it's pretty great.
And that kind of leads to one of our other questions about, so the hackathon starts this afternoon, FarHack. What are you hoping to see from that, and any advice for anyone who's hacking later?
I think the thing that I'm most excited to see is what people do with the new action frames. So the thing that Horsefax and Tony launched on Wednesday, when you click on one of the custom actions now, you actually get like a frame that pops up, and it can take you to a wizard, and you can do all kinds of different things. So if you're tipping somebody, you can now select which currency, how much you want to tip, plug all of that in. And so I think we're very excited to see what people do with it, and frankly, very excited to see what people do that we never thought they would do.
Yeah, I mean, just to like put a point on it, they're composable, right? And I actually didn't even appreciate this when the team was building it, but you could use, Paybot in your flow, right? And you could start with your action in your frame, but then call another frame and flip it over. So I think people are going to get more and more sophisticated with how they do these kind of multi-action, frame flows, which will be cool.
Our team has already built a action which will turn any cast into a ticket in our linear dashboard internally. So if you have to have a bug report, one click, boom.
Oh, that's cool.
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that the thing I would say is what I said yesterday is we need to do our job of getting everything into the protocol, over the next few months for channels. But I think channel-specific clients, if I was to bet like 2 years from now, do you have a breakout app on Farcaster? It's an app that starts with a channel and uses the kind of like groundswell from a specific community to actually to boost it.
Is Nouns going to be the first client? Channel client?
So
Is
Nouns
there another one?
has 3 projects that they've funded, which I think is great. And I think, they were basically the first community outside of like Farcaster to actually come into Farcaster. I think, Noun 40 and some of the others, Seneca, Toady.
Noun 40 basically said on Twitter, we're all going to Warpcast, and then they all decided.
Right, and it was
I was
like,
already there, and I'm like, what we've been telling you forever. Why didn't you listen? And no, it had to come from them.
right. So, but I think that early group, and then you and others, and so like, I'm excited to see how that plays out, because very early on, they were actually some of the first people saying, hey, I want different functionality for channels, and nudging people towards building new clients. I actually think is the right way to do it, rather than always lobbying Warpcast to be like, we want this, right? Like actually, Warpcast should try to keep simple and
It
push.
sounds like an opportunity for a new client.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's another shirt. We gotta get those shirts done.
Should we move to rapid fire and let these guys?
I think,
move on to the
yeah,
hackathon?
and then we can just end with the one of those. But yeah, go ahead. Good lightning round. This is Adrian's lightning round.
Okay,
If you're
rapid fire.
familiar, like just buckle up. It's
Don't
gonna be fun.
overthink.
Don't overthink it. Just whatever comes to your head.
Arch Degen had fire arrow tattoo. Which one did you get last night? I mean, who did you get?
Arch.
Okay.
Hold on, I have a follow-up question. So I walked around with these temporary tattoos last night, and I told people they had to pick one. I do have more of these for you all. It's your PFPs. So it was interesting. It was like a little social experiment. Most of the devs and the gamers picked Varun, and most of the artists, designers, creators, and nounsfolk picked the pirate. So there you go. So if you didn't want an actual tattoo, you can get Dan and Barun tattoos. I've got them for you later.
Okay,
Continue on.
Last thing you bought with crypto.
An ice cream. This
Yeah.
coffee.
I bought this coffee with crypto. Mountain or beach?
Beach.
Favorite channel?
Electronic music.
Ooh,
Tropical House.
there's a tropical house
Dan,
channel.
Dan just started this 2 weeks ago.
I've never even heard of that.
It's Vern's favorite type of music.
You don't like?
There's a long backstory.
All right.
It's
Well,
banned from The Office.
You guys, did you hear the DJ sets last night? This is not part of my rapid fire. How good were I?
They were great.
They're great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Do you know who shut down the place last night?
What do you mean?
Like, who was here last?
Ted?
No, me.
Her.
Whoa,
Yes,
okay.
just
I was
me
not. I was
and
gone.
me and KBC. Okay. Is Farcaster too nice?
No.
No.
Last book you read?
So,
I
I
think
did not
it's,
expect that pause.
I think it's How to Win the Time War.
And this is a recommendation from Brewer and Children of Time.
Time theme. Okay. Over under for the date. Like, what is the date where the Farcaster thesis will be tested? Where a Farcaster celebrity gets the platform and has to go build their own client and successfully does that.
Well,
This is rapid fire.
I
Not
don't know the
supposed to be
date.
in rapid fire.
I have a bet it's probably Brian Guan. And I mean, he has the capability of building an unlonely client for people who want to be unlonely.
And like, is that May 15th? Are we like 2 weeks?
I have dinner with him on Monday, so maybe Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday.
Brian, wherever you are, I'm following you to your new client. Favorite U.S. city that you don't live in?
New York.
Correct answer.
Yeah, New York.
Correct. Camping,
That was me, Boston, Dan.
camping or hotel?
Hotel.
Camping.
Football or soccer?
Soccer.
Football.
Ooh, you changed.
What? Oh, all
you
right.
like
I was
American
referring to the
football,
real
yeah.
football.
Oh,
the one that you
okay. I
throw.
was like, wait a minute,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's not what you were talking about.
That
It's the game you kick with your feet is called soccer.
was open
Okay, that's
to
what I thought.
I was open to
I was very
interpretation.
confused for a minute.
All right, kiwi skin on or off?
You know, when the kiwi meme came out, I'd never actually eaten a kiwi before.
What? And you have since.
Yeah, but no
With and
skin.
without.
No skin.
Yeah.
I don't like fruit. Seriously.
You guys are
You are,
adults.
that's so loud.
You guys are adults, so start eating fruit. I don't want it.
We need to ask
and
you-
my last one.
You've been asking.
Oh, okay. This
We've
is not
asked
a
Dan, but
lightning
we
round.
didn't.
Okay, so this is not a lightning round, but it is a question for B, and then I have one to end with. We all connect on a social network, and obviously this is a URL to IRL. But when was your first internet friend?
Like true internet friend.
Like, what was your first experience meeting someone online first and making a friend?
It was definitely World of Warcraft. We had a very serious raiding build going on, and I was playing on Australian servers because there were no Indian servers at the time. And there was a crew of people there that I knew pretty well.
Nice.
And Dan, if you want to, you answered this for us in episode 38, but if you want to answer again, just for those who are here who may not have heard, what was your first internet friend that you made? Do you remember that?
Did I answer this
Yeah, you
question?
did. You
No,
did.
I'm not going to remember.
It was some game. It was some like online game. I can't remember what it was. Which
Well, it
one?
was either EVE Online. Before that, it was probably Counter-Strike.
One of them.
What if it's like Facebook in college or something?
No.
Well,
I'll have to go back and watch the episode.
I would say two people. One, my college roommate. It was in the era of
That's what it was.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook, you get your email address assigned from college, and then the summer before, like this is 2006, right? So it's like Facebook is still like just unbelievably cool. And so getting access to Facebook, like you go on, and then you had all this like you tag all your interests, and then you could just creep on every single person in your incoming class. And I ended up meeting my college roommate through that. He was pretty weird, and so we ended up becoming really close friends. And yeah, so that was like real friend via the internet. But then the other one is Twitter. Actually, I mean, I've met so many people through Twitter, and now obviously Farcaster because I think it's like some of the closest friends I have from Silicon Valley were people I met on Twitter first and then ended up meeting in person.
Some of my closest friends I've met on Farcasters. And lastly, we want to ask you, how can we, not just us, but we, the collective we out there, help you as you're growing this network? Stumped them.
I have two.
Go ahead.
Honest feedback. I mean, people say that I'm not receptive to feedback. I always want feedback. And you can do it more aggressively in DCs, or if you want to do it publicly, I might go back and forth with you. But I think like honest feedback is the only way we're going to actually get to some level of truth and figuring out how to make this work. And then I think the second thing is that like you want Farcaster to be successful. It's actually interesting people in your life who you think might find Farcaster interesting, inviting them to the network, and then kind of being a little bit of their Sherpa at the beginning, because I think it's pretty intimidating. But and we can do a better job with WordCast to like make that a little bit more welcoming. And you can imagine sending an invite link from your account actually kind of creates a little bit more of a personalized onboarding experience. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately people stick around on social networks because their friends are there. And so if you're already friends with someone in the real world and you want to bring them into Farcaster and have them meet all these other people, I think that's actually super impactful. Because when we talk about something like QDAO, like that's actually QDAO, right? And so I think, you know, easy for me to ask, but well, it's actually a lot of work for people. But I think it enriches the experience, and it's I think really cool if like you know someone outside of Farcaster, bring them in, and then they end up meeting other people. Seems like a interesting thing to do with friends.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is, and I mean, you guys are already doing a great job of it, but giving people on Farcaster ways to connect outside of the feed, whether it's through a conversation, whether it's in person like this, I think that's what really strengthens the ties in the community.
I agree. I think the meetups that we've had, just even small, like things at Youth Denver, you know, all those kind of, even with small meetups too, I think are really important and help sort of solidify people coming back. All right, I think that's it. Anything else that you want to announce or say before we let you head up to Farhouse?
Thanks for doing this podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for permissionally letting us. So, and not having a CMO. And that's it. That's episode 100. Thank you. Stick around. Stick around. We're gonna shift over. It's gonna just take like 2 minutes, but grab some more food, grab some more coffee.